Saints fans and who-dats from all over the world. It's time for the Bayou Blitz, y'all. With Bob Rose and Kyle T.
Happy Wednesday, New Orleans Saints fans of the NFL, and especially fans of the Bayou Blitz. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your hosts for what I hope is your favorite podcast of the week, the Bayou Blitz. And I am joined by my partner in crime, Secret Agent Kyle T. Mosley. How are you tonight, Kyle?
That's Mosley. Kyle Mosley. Yes. Hey, how you doing, man?
If you're the new 007, I am 00 nothing, but I'm ready to proceed.
I think I'm 00 negative. But yeah, look, and we have a new Bond. Really, we have a new 007 and a new Bond movie, but the new 007 is going to be female, so it's going to be interesting. But look, man. Let's talk about Saints. We have some exciting news that we're going to announce around, I guess, 8:15 Central, 9:15 Eastern. But, Bob, it was a great win for the New Orleans Saints, man. The Saints came away with the victory in the Superdome. What's your thoughts?
Hey, yeah, they sure did, and a resounding victory at that. I know that the score was 31-24. But I don't know about you, Kyle. I never felt like the outcome was in doubt from very early on. The New Orleans Saints took control on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively, and I think they played their most complete game of the 2019 season. I was just completely impressed with Teddy Bridgewater, Michael Thomas, that offensive line, and the offensive game planning and how aggressive they were, even downfield with Mr. Checkdown Teddy. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, my goodness, we've come to expect a dominant game from the Saints defensive line, and we got that yet again. Demario Davis is a superhero in black and gold, but that Saints secondary. I know we kind of sung their praises last week for the job that they did on Amari Cooper and the Dallas receiving corps. But I think they stepped up their game, Kyle. They most certainly played their best game as a unit in 2019. And like I said, in my opinion, it was their most complete game on both sides of the football.
Yeah, definitely. Lattimore was outstanding. Eli Apple, remember I had some doubts about you, Eli. I'm sorry, but yeah, you performed very well. That should have been an interception. There was no penalty there, in my opinion. But you look at how the secondary played. PJ did get burned a few times. That was expected. They kind of keyed in on Godwin since Evans was pretty much shut down and shut out by Lattimore, but the Saints secondary performed well. But what I'm more impressed with, though, Bob, is that front, that line. Man, think about the rotation that we have, and I've got to really take note of all of the guys made a contribution, even the rookie Grandison, right? So if you look at how Mario Edwards was performing, then Malcolm Brown is I think he's having one of the best seasons I've seen from a Saints defensive tackle other than Rankins of last year, and you got Big O. Of course, you have Cam, and Marcus Davenport has really taken a leap forward. Then Tuttle, he came in, he helped out as well, man. So, I mean, you look at that rotation, we've got to be very impressed with what we see as a fan.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. First and foremost, this line is so deep, like you pointed out, that the team released Taylor Stallworth after week 2, and I thought Taylor Stallworth had a fine season as a rookie, undrafted rookie last year, and even played well through the preseason. It's not like he played his way off of the roster. He just didn't play nearly as well as this deep rotation inside. And that was before Rankins even came back. Now you have Rankins back and his recovery from his Achilles injury, which, remember, folks, that was late January this past year that happened. And the fact that he is rounded into shape so quickly, and they got him on the field rolling immediately last week. I think last week was his return, right?
Correct.
And just that I expected that when he did come back for the first few weeks, he would at least be on a limited snap count. No, they're throwing him right into the mix. And like you said, and we've had John Hendricks, editor of Canal Street Chronicles, on quite a few times. He's a good friend of both of ours. And John pointed out during the preseason that Malcolm Brown could turn out to be the same type of free agent signing that bolstered this defense, compared him to Demario Davis from last year. And so far, Brown is paying exactly those kind of dividends. And what's happening is those defensive linemen, and you pointed out Big O, David Onyemata, and I've been really impressed with this year's rookie undrafted free agent, Shai Tuttle. They're getting such quick penetration and decisive penetration inside that's leaving a little bit easier job for the Saints edge rushers. Granderson had one heck of a debut. He had notched his first career quarterback sack and got a couple of nice pressures. We know Cam Jordan is an absolute monster, probably the most underrated defensive player in the league. And Marcus Davenport is really, the last 3 weeks, really 3 or 4 weeks, he is playing like a top draft choice, like the type of player that teams give up draft capital to move up and get, like the Saints did so in last year's draft. Mario Edwards, is great to see him back on the field and in the lineup, especially with Trey Hendrickson being a little bit nicked up. And Edwards, he didn't get any sacks. He didn't cash in on the sack bonanza from this last Sunday, but he got close on quite a few plays. And I love his versatility, either inside or outside. This is, and I mentioned it in a couple articles earlier this week. I'm not bashful in saying I think that this is the deepest Saints defensive line we've ever seen. And this is currently the finest defensive line in the National Football League. There's not a defensive line I would take over this one, Kyle.
Yeah. I remember the days with Glover, Leroy Glover. He was a tremendous force for the Saints inside. I remember those guys in the 2006 season. They had a pretty good line at that time as well. But if you look at what we have now, and if one guy goes down, we still have a couple other guys that are able to fill in and step up and prove themselves worthy to be able to put some pressure on the quarterback. And last season, we did have glimpses time and time again, but it wasn't consistent. I think from the beginning of the season in 2019 to now, you see the consistency, but also you see how the line is maturing, as well as you see how the second-year pro Marcus Davenport is maturing as well. He caused a forced fumble. He put pressure on Winston. He was really handling that right tackle of Tampa Bay as well. And I really liked how he approached the game. And also he was disciplined. And that's another thing, guys. From the game with the Cowboys and this game, as well as the game with Russell Wilson, what the defensive line, and they must be coached up very well by Ryan Nielsen, is the discipline that they're not allowing like a Wilson or Dak Prescott and Winston to be able to run and get those cheap first downs. Now Russell Wilson is Houdini. He got his a little bit here and there, but you can see the discipline, and I think that's going to bode well for us going forward into the season.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And, you can even see the discipline that you pointed out from the beginning of the season. This is not just an off-season transformation. What did we see in the opening week, Kyle? We saw Deshaun Watson, a very mobile quarterback weapon for the Houston Texans. We saw him break containment a couple of times, and I know both you and I showed concern, especially on Davenport's side, about said discipline. And Jared Goff, who is not known for his mobility, but he can move around okay. He escaped for a couple of first downs and avoided sacks in week 2. Ryan Nielsen and, the defensive line leaders like Cam Jordan and, even probably Sheldon Rankins from the sideline, they've done an outstanding job of making adjustments by what they're seeing on film, even since the beginning of the season. So you got to give all the credit to these guys in the world. Again, I'll step back towards the Saints secondary. There were a couple of those pressures on Winston this past Sunday, and even Prescott the Sunday before against Dallas. That defensive line, yes, they are dominant, but there were a couple of those sacks or pressures that were caused by good coverage down the field. The quarterback had about 3 seconds or so to throw the ball, which doesn't sound like a lot of time, folks, but in the life of an NFL player during a play, that's an eternity. And the secondary is holding up very, very well in coverage. In this day and age of NFL football, that's not the prescription for consistent wins. You've got to get pressure up front and fast pressure to hurry throws and get that quarterback rushed, even if you don't get them to the ground. And that's exactly what the Saints are doing. It's a perfect recipe for success.
Good recipe for success. You see the continued maturity, like I said, with Marcus Davenport. But when Granderson came in, people may say that was garbage time. No, it wasn't garbage time. It was important time. You saw what the Saints continued to have some faith in him, even though he went through that legal issue as well as his 14-day imprisonment there. But you saw what a lot of people saw in him going into the draft: his burst, his agility, his athletic ability as well. You pair him with these guys on that rotation, it's going to be very, very difficult for people in the future to say, who do we stick? Is it Cam Jordan? Is it Davenport? Now you have Granderson and you have Malcolm Brown and Rankins trying to break through the middle. It's going to be a very long day for most offensive coordinators trying to be able to make sure his quarterback and that center call out the correct protections that's necessary to defend against the New Orleans Saints. And I really like what we saw in the linebacking core as well, Bob.
Oh yeah, like we said earlier tonight, and I think we've sung his praises every single week so far. This season, Demario Davis is playing like a superhero under a fleur-de-lis helmet, and AJ Klein is playing very well too. He is athletically limited compared to Davis and the injured Alex Anzalone. But Klein is playing good, aggressive football, smart, heads up, and he's playing within himself. And Kiko Alonso seems to be getting more comfortable as a linebacker in Mike Nolan and Dennis Allen's system every week. I love the way Alonso comes forward in the run and fills those gaps. He's a little bit undersized, but he's smart. He plays with leverage well. Would I rather have Anzalone in the lineup? Yeah, absolutely. But Alonso was a fine trade and is playing well enough to keep Craig Robertson on the bench. And you and I are both fans of Mr. Robertson and what his versatility to a linebacking core. So this is a very deep and talented defense at all three levels. I'm really, really impressed with the way that they have been playing. Really the entire season. But they're starting to put it together and are becoming an absolute formidable force.
I listened to Chris Carter, Nick Wright this morning on First Thing First. And both of those guys were making a case for Drew Brees being a part of the not just, we know he's a Hall of Famer, but will he be on that Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks, of the greatest of the great? Does he need that one more Lombardi trophy to be under his belt going forward? And we can debate about that a little bit later on into the show. But if you notice Drew, over the years, the one thing that has been plaguing him is the inconsistency of what type of defensive unit will complement the offensive unit. That is the only reason, in my opinion, that the New Orleans Saints do not have at least 2 to 3 more championships during the tenure of Drew Brees paired with Sean Payton. So right now, guys, before we go any further, I'd like to call to the show and have a good announcement and bring to our show Mr. Scott Kennedy of the Maven Network and Sports Illustrated. Let's see if we can give him a quick call and see if he's available.
Hello.
Hey, Scott.
This is.
Hey, this is Kyle Mosley and Bob Rose from the Bayou Blitz Podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. In Who Dat country?
In Who Dat? Yes, right. I know you're hailing from the ATL, right?
Yeah. It's one of the most underrated rivalries in all of sports because both teams have historically been so bad, but it's a great rivalry.
Yeah. Look, I spent some time in Atlanta going through Morehouse College, but I tell you, man, even back then when both of the teams, like you said, were not very good, it was still a hated rivalry.
Well, and what was fun, I went to Auburn, so if I'd come back on the same day as a Saints game in Atlanta, man, I-85 going back down through Montgomery was just packed with Who Dats. So wow. It's always been a lot of fun. It's been a great rivalry.
Awesome. Well, Scott, I'm glad to have you on with us tonight. If you guys don't know, Scott is the general manager of the Maven Networks, right, as well as Sports Illustrated. And we're making this announcement tonight with you, Scott, that the Saints News Network will be partnering with you guys in delivering Saints content for SI.com.
Well, I know I'm excited, and Kyle, I hope you and your team are excited too. Just having the opportunity to be part of the SI.com, the Sports Illustrated brand, and then attracting top level journalists and radio personalities, TV people, in order to bring an unprecedented level of local coverage is just I think it is just an awesome prospect for Saints fans. You've done a great job, and this gives you a chance to reach more Saints fans, which is what you're interested in, and we're interested in bringing excellent local coverage to all the teams across America.
How did this partnership work with you guys getting to be the main, I guess, buying Sports Illustrated? Because I know there was some transactions that occurred. Can you give them a little history?
Yeah, we're an operator of Sports Illustrated. The owner of Sports Illustrated now is called Authentic Brands Group, and they buy rights. They don't actually operate. So they've got like the rights to I don't even know what all they have rights to. I think it's like Marilyn Monroe, Muhammad Ali, that type of stuff. So they bought the brand Sports Illustrated, but they don't have an operator.
Okay.
So James Heckman, our CEO, says, you guys need somebody to run this thing for you. And I believe, and I'm pretty sure this is all public record, is we've got 10-year licenses to operate, and I say licenses like multiple 10-year licenses to operate Sports Illustrated, including the magazine. So while we don't own Sports Illustrated, the analogy I use a lot of real estate analogies when talking about this stuff. I say, if you were leasing a house for 100 years, what would you say? You say that's my house. So we don't own Sports Illustrated, but we're going to be operating Sports Illustrated until I plan on retiring. That's for sure.
Well, that's awesome. Hopefully, I will be right there with you. Tell me this, Scott. We have a great Network. We've been on the air for over 10 years with the podcast. I've been producing Saints content for the Who Dat Nation for over 13 years with multiple websites. First started with deuceandreggie.com. Then we went into saintsnews.net, now the Saints News Network. Tell us this. What can the fans expect of you guys and us as well, compared to some of those other competing sites out there like ESPN's and everyone else?
Well, I think, I don't know that anybody's doing this at the level that we are going to do this, because Sports Illustrated is still going to be Sports Illustrated. They're still going to have the long form features, the in-depth reporting, the breaking news type of stuff. So the level of coverage that we're going to add with this model on the local level is something that nobody else is doing on digitally speaking. FoxSports.com tried it sort of, but all of the RSNs are basically separate businesses anyway. So you could have Fox Sports South, and they basically never even talk to FoxSports.com on things. So what they can expect from you is the same great coverage. From us, we want to bring the technology and the reach to reach more fans and make sure the fans have an easy experience to get to your content quickly, load times, video, podcasts, all of those same type of things, and hopefully, and an app. If you didn't have one already, you will have an app. So all of those type of things that make it so that the top-notch Saints coverage is right as easy as just a thumb away on your phone. And then there's still the same Sports Illustrated in-depth type of national articles that have always been there.
Awesome. Bob, any questions for Scott?
You guys are taking care of everything. Scott, first of all, this is Bob Rose. I want to, thank you not only for joining us on the show tonight, hopefully the first of many appearances, but, just thank you for having, Kyle and definitely myself, included in this exciting project. You said it yourself. I mean, there is no more recognizable name in sports than Sports Illustrated. So I just want to say on my behalf that it's just an honor and a privilege to be part of the brand. And I know I'm speaking for Kyle when I say this. You are going to get our best efforts and best content. We're just so excited to be a part of your team.
Well, like I said, there's a saying when you work in sports for a long time, you end up rooting for the names on the back of the jerseys instead of the names on the front.
Right. That's
kind of how I am. You know two things about me. I went to Auburn, and I grew up in Atlanta Falcons fan. I want Saints News Network to blow it out of the water. My favorite publisher, I shouldn't say this, I don't want to get out, is Christopher Walsh, Alabama, Bama Central. Just love the guy. He writes books, spins them out like, I throw out a tweet. It's like, oh, yeah, I just wrote another book. I'm like, how on earth do you do that? He's amazing. So I'm rooting for you guys, too, because, well, one, I'm selfish. I'm rooting for me, too. If you're successful, it's going to make us successful. And, getting back to it, talking to Mike Fisher called me yesterday, a big radio personality, breaking news insider in Dallas. He was excited. There was some negative publicity that came around this, and he's excited. And Mike's been in this thing for 20 years. Everybody in Dallas knows who Mike Fisher is, and he's part of this thing. And he's like, you know what? We had 3 Dallas Mavericks articles, the Dallas Cowboys coverage. Nobody has this type of coverage now, and now Sports Illustrated does. So, fans of Sports Illustrated, fans of the Dallas Cowboys, fans of the Saints, Falcons, whoever your team is, you're going to get an unprecedented level of coverage, both locally and nationally. And I'm excited about it. I can't wait for this really to start get cooking, and we're just getting started.
Good. I am chomping at the bit. I know my guys are as well. We went through some training last night, but we are ready to pounce on it and be able to push out the best content to our fans. Now, before you get off the line, since you are in Atlanta, what's going on with the Falcons?
God, I thought you were going to say the Braves.
I
tweeted out. I thought you were going to say the Braves today. Let me give you the Braves for a second. I said, we get a bad rap for being a bad sports town, and I actually did a video on it with Atlanta, talking about Atlanta United. It's like, we're not a bad sports town. We're a bad sports teams town. There's tons of sports fans in in this place. I'm like, we used to get made fun of because we couldn't sell out playoff games. I'm like, do you see why we don't sell out playoff games? They put a 10 spot up on us in game 5, for God's sakes. That's why nobody goes to the damn playoff games. Pardon my language, a little fired up. Let me go back to the Falcons for you, though, since you brought this up. And it's good to be back on a podcast. I haven't stretched out this part of my, repertoire in a while. So what happened was, the number one after 28-3, the number one offense in the NFL was handed over to a rookie offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. That was a mistake. Steve Sarkisian took the number one offense and actually set a record for futility from a number one offense on the next year. So that was a mistake, and then they doubled down and kept him. So as soon as they did that, I said, this is over. Dan Quinn is going to lose the team. You know the fine line between having a locker room and not having a locker room. And if the players don't believe in the coaches, it's done.
Right.
It is over.
Right. It
was over last year. They just didn't know it yet. So this is the death knell. And finally, when I was watching us play, I say us, like I'm out there playing. When I was watching the Falcons play the Eagles on, I think, a Sunday night game, and they're running out their 4th-string quarterback, 8th-string running back, and then they're turning the ball over. And the Falcons barely won. I texted my friend and said, if they don't win this game, they're going 0-16. Well, they might go 1-15. They don't believe in what's going on out there. And it started with the Steve Sarkisian hire, and it ended when they didn't fire him and they doubled down on it in the second year. That's what's going on with the Falcons. That and Thomas Dimitroff doesn't know how to build a defense. So when does a general manager start getting a little bit of heat about what's going on there when you're pouring all these resources and skill players in the offense and your defense is just going to crap?
Wow.
So
that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Scott, do they have the talent in that locker room, the core talent, to rebuild into the perennial playoff contender that they were not too long ago?
No, I think you're gonna have to burn it down. Honestly, I mean, you wasted 3 years of Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, and Devontae Freeman, and the running back on the shelf life on a running back is done. Julio and Matt Ryan, you wasted the prime of their careers with these last 3 years. So, if they were knocking on the door to the playoffs, being in there for a year in and year out in the prime of those careers. They couldn't quite get over the top because, they gave away 5 draft picks to get a great wide receiver after giving up, 50-something points to the Packers. But I digress. No, they don't. They're not going to. How old's Matt Ryan? How many years is Julio Jones going to have left? Your running back spot. Keanu Neal on defense is just heart-wrenching. They don't have the playmakers on defense. They gave up 50 this weekend, and their offensive skill players are getting old. So, no, there's going to be some lean times ahead, and it's going to take a full rebuild. It's going to take a couple years.
Yeah. This next game coming up, if Dan Quinn cannot produce a W, do you think Mr. Blank will go ahead and call it a night?
I don't know. It's over. So it's just a matter of do you ride out the season or not? Because I've seen this rodeo before. I've been a Falcons fan and Atlanta Braves fan, and for 40 years now, I've seen this show. I know how it ends, and it's going to end with a coaching search. So they get embarrassed again. I don't know. I mean, you go on the road and give up 50 to a team that scored 10 at home the week before, and you still have your job. So I wouldn't say that it's going to happen if they're 1-5 that he'd get fired, because probably should have been fired already.
Yeah, I was surprised, and I was watching part of the game alongside the Saints game at the same time, being here in Houston, and I thought the Falcons had a golden opportunity at halftime. Then all of a sudden, it just seemed like an offense explosion from the Texans, and I was wondering, is the defense part of the reason as well?
Of course it is. Dan Quinn is a very good defensive coach, but he puts himself in charge of that defense. Like, maybe it wasn't our defensive coordinator's fault. Now,
right.
I still think Dimitroff's whole MO is to say, I'm going to get so much talent that it doesn't matter who the offensive coordinator is. So they put all of their money and resources, free agency, draft picks, everything into that offense. Ironically, when they have made picks on defense, they've been really, really good. Deion Jones is a beast. Love the guy.
Yes.
Ken O'Neal, who's lost 2 seasons in a row, was a great pick. And then you're about done. You know, they spent a high pick on Vic Beasley. So 3 out of last 10 years, they put some effort into the defense. The rest has been all offense. Started with Julio Jones. Like I said, that they played the Packers, what was that, 08, 09 already, 10 years ago already. They played the Packers in the playoffs and didn't force Aaron Rodgers and the Packers to punt. They gave up 50 in a home game as the number 2 seed in the playoffs. And what do? You go and trade away 5 picks for a wide receiver? How'd that work out for you?
Yeah.
Worked out well because Julio Jones is a beast, but 2 years later you're playing San Francisco 49ers in an NFC Championship game. Julio has 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and you lose because you can't stop anybody. So I'm a child of the 80s. I believe in offensive and defensive lines, and somehow that went out of vogue in the NFL.
Definitely. Well, you guys face the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday, and I hope you guys have a good performance. How about that? I was going to say something else.
My jaw
you go into
a
Falcon season just saying, please don't embarrass me. And in 98, we made it all the way to the last day until Eugene Robinson goes and gets arrested. Man of the Year goes out and gets arrested for prostitute solicitation the night before the Super Bowl. And then 3 years ago, we made it to about 13 minutes left in the season.
Well, look, we are kind of shell-shocked here in the Who Dat Nation as well, Scott, so don't we kind of feel
well, things are going good there. You know, I feel like, you know, cyborg Drew Brees is going to be throwing for 4,000 yards when he's 62 years old, but maybe the guy is human, and it looks like there's going to be life after Brees. Yeah,
well, look, Brees has already talked about his timetable maybe a lot shorter. I think they announced today that there's a possibility of him joining the team when we play you guys, the Falcons. So that should be pretty interesting.
Well, he's pretty amazing. He's a tough guy to root against, that's for sure.
Definitely. Well, look, Scott, I really do appreciate you being on. Any last words for the listeners about the network?
No, there are no last words. We're just getting started.
All right. Awesome. All right. That's Scott Kennedy, GM of Maven Network Sports Illustrated, and my boss. We'll talk later. Take care, Scott.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you.
Take care. Bye. All right, Bubble.
I tell you what, that was some great stuff. He, you know, first of all, you know, you kind of joked at the end about, you know, him being your boss. You're my boss, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, you can't help but get excited at how excited he is about this project with Maven Networks and Sports Illustrated going forward. But I'll tell you where he had me sitting at the edge of my seat was his take on football. You know, he hit the nail on the head so much, you know, and very, very specific and very candid about a team that he rooted for, you know, from the time he was a kid. You know, and you and I can relate, you know, with our love for the New Orleans Saints, Kyle. And you can hear the excitement in his voice. But the fact that the Falcons and Saints, regardless of whose side of that rivalry you stand on, the two franchises are truly kindred spirits. You know, both franchises have come so close so many times, you know, and oftentimes, more often than not, meeting with a tragic end. I know the Saints have a Super Bowl championship in their trophy case, but just before Scott came on, Kyle, you were talking about how many more they could have and would have and should have had, you know, even just in the Drew Brees tenure. Let's forget about the Jim Mora tenure for a minute. You know, so we can certainly relate with some of the pain that Scott was talking about.
Yeah, definitely understand the pain, understand the trauma. I think it's more the trauma and the much needed time in therapy for these fan bases. But I tell you this much, man, even though you like to see the Dirty Birds lose, you still want to have a competitive and spirited game whenever we play. You know, so I don't care what the record would be. I think you're going to get that from both teams.
And I was just going to echo that exact same sentiment. As you know, and we're going to be, announcing plans through our Bayou Blitz group, about me coming down to New Orleans for the Falcons game the week after the bye, see if we can have something special going on. But I was just about to echo your sentiment that it doesn't matter. The Falcons can be 1 and whatever, and the Saints can be 8-1 or whatever it would be at that point. We know that it's going to be a hotly contested, physical, fierce, and closely played football game whenever these two teams get onto the field.
Yeah, definitely. No doubt, and Maddie Choke on Ice will be there, as well as Julio Jones. So we will have some fun with those guys. Let's go over a couple of quick things about what you guys are going to expect, and I'm not going to belabor the point. The Saints News Network will be producing exclusive content for SI.com. So you guys can be able to find us when you go to SI.com under NFL and Saints. You will find us where Bob, myself, Barry, Brendan, Kevin Buckles, and a couple other guys, a part of Saints News Network, will be able to produce some original content for you guys in the Who Dat Nation. And also we're going to have interviews. We're going to have a lot of fan interactive type of videos and beat street type videos. We're going to get down in the Who Dat Nation and show the flavor of New Orleans for the SI.com brand. So it's going to be great. I'm excited. And just, guys, wait till you see what we put out the next several weeks into the Super Bowl. It's going to be awesome. All right, guys. Go ahead, Bob. You got a question?
I was just going to say myself that that I'm excited to be a part of the project. I'm talking to you and really listening to Scott just now. Listen, folks, for those of you that have followed, Kyle and myself and Barry and Brendan and all the other names, our work is going to remain the same. We can still be found the same way, but there is just going to be more of our content out there. And I know Kyle just rolled out how to keep up with the Saints News Network and through SI.com. But if you have any questions, get a hold of Mr. Mosley or myself, and we'll direct you in the right direction, because we want you to be part of this growing family. It's a really exciting project. Very little else, like Kyle just said, very little else about our work, is still changing. We can all be found the same way. There's just going to be a different way to find us, and it's going to be kind of mainstream now. But it is truly exciting, and, honestly, I'm honored to be a part of the project as well.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So you also, guys, will be able to find the Bayou Blitz podcast, as well as a couple other new podcasts that we're going to probably roll out to the network online as well. So let's continue on with the rest of the show. Bob,
yes.
I got to bring up a couple of stats, and I want your opinion on this. The Saints against the Buccaneers on third down, we were 8 out of 15, 53%. The number is climbing a little bit. We were 40% most of the year.
Mm-hmm.
That still is a concern to me. I know Teddy looked a lot sharper than he did because and fans, you got to realize this, it takes time to get acclimated to the National Football League and the speed of the league. So you see how those balls, the zip on the balls, the decisiveness was more. But why are the Saints, when I know guided by Drew Brees, we usually are in 60-70% range when it comes to third down efficiency. What's going on? Why are we lagging at this particular time? Is it just because of the leadership at quarterback, or is it something else?
Teddy Bridgewater is not Drew Brees, but there's only one Drew Brees that has ever walked the planet. So you can't fault Bridgewater for that. God forbid we criticize him for being closer to human than Mr. Brees is. That's part of it.
And another big part, and we saw the Saints kind of get control of this on Sunday, which is why the third down percentage conversion was so much higher. But all season long, even before Breeze went down, the Saints were kind of shooting themselves in the foot with offensive penalties early in the series, and that would put them behind the yard markers. And now all of a sudden, when you are facing a 1st and 15 or 2nd and 20, and you don't have Drew Brees at quarterback, Sean Payton as a play caller, your options are a little bit limited. So as long as the Saints don't shoot themselves in the foot early in downs, and they can pick up a decent first down gain. And when I say decent, I mean 5 or 6 yards, and give them a third and very manageable. Mr. Payton, Coach Payton, can open up his playbook, and we saw a lot of that on Sunday against Tampa Bay. And we also credit Teddy Bridgewater for making the plays. You and I sort of suspected that Tampa Bay would sell out to contain Alvin Kamara in that Saints running game, and sure enough, that's what we saw. And Peyton and Bridgewater, they came out gunning. And Teddy was very sharp and decisive in his decision making. Look, it's not my criticism of Teddy Bridgewater has never been that he makes poor decisions. My criticism of him is that he makes decisions slowly. But as he's with each passing week, he is getting more and more confident. Making plays downfield. He's getting more and more confident with what he sees, and he's pulling that trigger a little bit faster. And as a result, Peyton and Pete Carmichael, the offensive coordinator, are having more confidence in him and letting him do more. And that's why we saw such an efficient Saints offense on Sunday. Even though Kamara was contained, I think Alvin had a little bit over 100 yards all purpose. Which is a solid number for most running backs, but not the number we're used to seeing out of Kamara. The Tampa Bay decided we're not gonna let Alvin Kamara beat us, and credit Teddy Bridgewater for making the plays down the field, Coach Payton for letting him make the plays down the field and letting him trust what he saw. And then, of course, we finally saw Jared Cook get involved in the offense. And a tight end is every quarterback's best friend on a third and medium or third and manageable. And that's another reason why we saw that Saints, third down percentage climb a little bit closer to what we're seeing with Drew Brees behind center.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing that concerned me also was the fact that if you look at the pass receiving, of course, we know Michael Thomas is our number one. He had 13 targets, 11 receptions, and 182 yards. He averaged 16.5. He had 2 touchdowns, and he was pretty physical on those touchdowns as well. I applauded him on that one. As well as Cook. He was pretty physical on that touchdown that he was able to score as well. But the next leading pass receiver was Alvin Kamara with 6 catches and 42 yards. Then Cook with 4 catches and 41 yards. And Hill with 3 catches, 39 yards. Next comes our only wide receiver that had a catch, Ted Ginn. Traquan Smith was not there. Carr was not there. What's going on? Are you concerned?
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. Look, we know that no matter who's at quarterback, we know that this offense at the skill positions, this offense runs through Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. I said it many times. We said it on the show, many times last year and through the off season. We spit out the numbers. So those of you that follow us already know this. Last year, Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas combined were responsible for almost 55% of the Saints' offensive production in 2 players. Now, granted, those are 2 superstar players, as good as any at their position throughout the league. But that's still a little bit higher than what you want. And the thing that many of us were yelling about all summer, the Saints need to get production from somebody else, somewhere. Another running back, another receiver, another tight end. Someone has to provide another threat against opposing defenses for those rare times that both Thomas and Kamara, they can't both be stopped. I've not yet seen this. But if they're both contained,
and the Saints offense or defense gives up some points or some yardage, then this team is in trouble. And I don't change my tune on that. The 55% last year that we saw from them is even higher this year. I think I haven't done my numbers since the Buccaneers game, but coming into the Buccaneers game, Thomas and Kamara were responsible for about 63% of the Saints offensive production.
Right.
And I got to believe with the monster game that Thomas had and the touches that Kamara had against Tampa Bay, that percentage might even be higher. It is good to see Jared Cook get more involved in the offense. And as he, we're talking about Bridgewater feeling more comfortable each week. Cook's going through the same kind of thing. He didn't see a lot of preseason reps. We saw him limited in his route running early in the year and have a case of the drop tooth. So coming into this week against Jacksonville, Cook he's the third most targeted receiver on the Saints behind Thomas and Kamara. He's been targeted 24 times. He's only caught 12 of them, though, Kyle. That number has to go up. I'm not going to be the one sitting here, hey, the Saints need to trade for A.J. Green, an injury-prone A.J. Green, by the way, who I'm against, or Emmanuel Sanders from Denver, who I would love to see in this uniform. I don't think the Saints necessarily have to make an October trade deadline move. I would like to see it depending on the player. But if Jared Cook can catch higher than 50% of his targets, or Traquan Smith, he's still struggling with that ankle injury, as you saw. If he gets healthy, we saw some good things from him last year and during the preseason. They get some more production from either one or both of them. This offense is going to be fine. We just haven't seen it yet. We've seen glimpses, like you pointed out, with Cook against Tampa Bay, and Traquan was on his way to having a nice game against the Rams before he got hurt. So he gets healthy, or Cook can be a little bit sharper. I think this offense will be fine.
I have to say this. I'm really concerned, and I listened to a couple guys talk about the possibility of a trade. I don't know if A.J. Green is something that the Saints can possibly deal with and package at this time, especially with his salary and the limitations the Saints have in the cap at this time. But who do you give up? That's the question. Right. And I don't believe A.J. Green is the type of receiver that's going to want to be second fiddle to Michael Thomas. So I don't think that notion is going to hold very well. But, the Saints have put out some trades and have made some moves that are very, very important moves. I just have to say, in Sean and Loomis, we have to trust you. What's going to happen, right? All right, so let's go on and talk about one area that was concerned this game. Not Morstead, not Lutz, but Deonte Harris. Now, it's not that the kid can't, and Sean Payton brought this up during preseason. You can't put that ball or allow that ball to touch the ground, right?
Nope.
Before we talk about the muff, we got to talk about he allowed the football to go, and the Saints lost almost 10 yards of field position when he hit the ground. Mm-hmm. Then he muffed the punt, right? Mm-hmm. Fortunately, we were able to retain. But I'm looking at how he's performing. I was kind of surprised that Payton did not make a move, but I wonder if we see this again, will he make a move? What's your thoughts?
I think if we continue to see, I don't think we'll be able to continue to see it for very much longer before coach does make a move. You pointed out, the misjudging error that cost the Saints about 10 or 12 yards. And the fumbled punt that the team was fortunate to get back. But Kyle, he also bobbled another one against the Buccaneers It was a slight bobble, but it caused him to have a hitch in his step that may have caused him to miss a crack, which cost the Saints more field position there. We know that Coach Payton has very little patience with his special teams play. I hearken back to Marcus Murphy. Marcus Murphy was a heck of a returner. Extremely explosive, but couldn't hold on to the football. We didn't see that in him in a Saints uniform for very long before Coach Payton pulled his magic act and made Marcus Murphy disappear. And I worry. I think he's going to have more patience with Deonte Harris because that young man is extremely dynamic. But it wouldn't surprise me if we saw a couple more bobbles from Harris. That Payton would sit him either for a few games or certainly in big moments and go with someone that he trusts. You and I both have a dear friend. Well, certainly more dear to you. Coach, I can hear you in my head now talking about special teams need to be special.
Yeah.
Well, you can't be special if you don't catch the ball. And I promise you that Coach Payton and their special teams coaches, that's all they care about. Would it be nice to get an occasional big return or even a touchdown? Of course. But you want your offense back on the field, for a higher percentage chance of scoring. And to do that, your guy needs to field the ball. Otherwise, nothing else good can happen from that. So it starts with that.
Yeah, definitely. Starts with that, ends with my belief what happens on the offense and defensive line. What's your analysis of the offensive line first?
What, for the Saints coming up against the Jaguars here?
No, their performance against the Bucs.
Oh my God, they played outstanding. I know we're singing the praises of the defensive line and the whole defense in general. We've talked about how well Teddy has played and how monstrous Michael Thomas was. But it all starts with that offensive line. We saw, and I'm going to start with Teron Armstead in particular because he's the offensive lineman that I singled out in my post-game piece. Armstead struggled a little bit against Dallas last week. Struggled, for his high standards. He was matched up against Shaquille Barrett, who came into this game leading the NFL with 9 sacks and I think almost 20 quarterback pressures. Barrett was held to 0 quarterback pressures, 0 sacks, 0 quarterback hits, and 2 tackles. Armstead is right back to form. Ryan Ramczyk, if there's a better right tackle in the NFL, I don't know who he is. So prove me wrong. And I know you love the way this kid's playing. I'm more impressed every single week with the way Eric McCoy is playing at center. He's extremely mobile. He can handle the big mammoth defensive tackles, and he can handle the more athletic ones as well. That young man looks like he's going to have a very long and productive career. Kyle, and I know I'm really picking needles out of haystacks here. I continue to be a tiny bit concerned with Larry Warford and Andrus Peat inside. They played well enough against the Bucs, well enough against Dallas. But we're not seeing those big, giant holes open up on the inside running game like we're used to seeing. Or more importantly, consistent cutback lanes, which is where Alvin Kamara is his most dynamic. And that starts with the guard play. I think both Pete and Warford have been pretty solid in pass protection, but it's their run blocking. And again, I'm picking needles out of haystacks here because they're playing well enough. I guess I've been spoiled by how well they played, the last few years, that they're just not at that standard right now.
Right. Pro Football Focus, they rated Ramczyk had the best performance. They graded him out at 85.1. 83.6. Eric McCoy was 75.1. Armstead 73.8. So the bookends and right dead center in the middle performed the best. Like you said, those guards were suspect. And Warford, what I've been noticing, has been doing a lot of reaching. So if a guy
Yeah.
is doing a lot of reaching, that means his footwork is off, So I wonder if we're going to see more of that. But who else you going to put in there? We have no one else other than Cameron Tom or Clapp, right? So those guys are just number twos, and I don't think we're going to be able to get rid of Pete nor Warford, and I don't really want to. But Pete, with his size, has always been a concern to me. But again, look at his footwork. Remember last week, if you looked at the problems Teron Armstead was having, look at his footwork. So I think it all starts with the alignment, how well they're able to move, how well they're able to open their hips as well. And I think you see Warford he's still a little stiff at times,
Yeah.
But is it something that the staff is going to work on, or probably run plays that he can be able to handle? Yes. And if you look at our schedule, man, we still got a pretty difficult schedule ahead. These Jaguars are no one to sneeze at. So let's talk a little bit about the Jaguars, man. What are your thoughts about the team as a whole?
The team as a whole, this game scares me. And I got in a discussion with somebody on social media. I think it might have even been in the Bayou Blitz group about this being a potential trap game for the Saints. And I don't like that terminology necessarily, because these guys are pros. These guys are competitors on both sides of the ball, and they come in to win each and every single game. But the Saints are just coming off of such a resounding win. They're staring a showdown, with a road showdown with the Chicago Bears next week. And in the past, when Sean Payton teams have struggled and stumbled a little bit, even the strongest ones, it's been in this type of situation. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 2-3, but they've been in every game. They will fight you to the end. They are still extremely physical on both sides of the ball. So if you don't come with your chin strap buckled, you're going to get your head knocked off. That's the way these Jaguars play. So they're going to punch you in the mouth from the opening whistle and make you fight for every inch, every yard, every score. So this, and I expect the Saints will come ready to play. This team is playing with a chip on their shoulder, and that's what's so easy to love about them. But when you start with,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. I was just going to start with position by position analysis.
Yeah, before you go to position by position, man, I got to say that when you look at the Jaguars, and I watched them play the Houston Texans the second week of the season, and they lost that game 13-12. And I know Minshew, he had to come in relief of Foles against the Chiefs week one. He came in and he put up some numbers on a really suspect Chiefs defense now that we see. The Houston Texans, they balled with us but didn't do that well against the Jaguars and came out with and squeaked out with the win at the end. So then they won against the Tennessee Titans. Then they won against the Denver Broncos. Then they lost against C-Mac and the Panthers, right? With Kyle Lanley, who really didn't have a great performance. If it were not for C-Mac, they could have won that game as well, right? So 34-27 was the score. But if you look at all of the teams, do they actually compare to the defensive nature of the Saints as well as the offensive nature of the Saints? Other than, we know the Chiefs do, and the Texans can, but the Titans, Broncos, and Panthers, really? I'm not that concerned about the game, but I have to be logical and say they really didn't have really that high-level caliber of team that they played against. other than the Chiefs, in my opinion.
No, you're absolutely right. And even though, this Jacksonville team is physical, remains physical on both sides of the ball, that's kind of their mantra. Let's just look at the last two games. They gave up 24 points and 455 total yards to the Denver Broncos.
Right.
Folks, and I grew up loving the Denver Elways, but they aren't that anymore. Flip on a couple different games of the Denver Broncos this year. I promise you'll only be able to stomach about a half an hour of it before you flip it off. The Broncos are just that bad, especially offensively. And the Jaguars gave up 455 yards to them. Last week against Carolina, without Cam Newton in the lineup, they gave up 34 points and 507 yards. Now, Little Mac, Christian McCaffrey, he balled out. And he's a terrific player. We know that as, people that root for the Saints, have to see him every year. We know how talented he is, but they have very little else offensively, and they rolled up over 500 yards. Jalen Ramsey, the Jaguars cornerback, maybe he'll play, maybe he won't. I suppose it depends on what kind of mood he's in that particular day. And the Jaguars do have some talent on every level of their defense. There's something missing with them. And I know, the media likes to jump on this Minshew mania, Gardner Minshew on offense, and he's a nice story, but he's nothing more than a semi-serviceable quarterback. The Jaguars don't have a lot of weapons, and Minshew is not good enough to beat a team all by himself. And God, I hope I'm not jinxing the Saints defense by talking down on him a little bit. On paper, this is a game that the Saints should win very easily on paper. But it's a road game in the NFL, which always automatically makes it a little bit tougher challenge. And again, the Jaguars are going to bring it on offense with Leonard Fournette and an offensive line that can't protect their quarterback very well. So Marcus Davenport, Cam Jordan and company, they might eat well again. But they're going to have to stop the run first and foremost, because if the Jaguars can establish that run with Fournette, they're going to be trouble all day long for that Saints defense.
Yeah, you can't take the stash for granted. I still believe, man, if the Saints defensive line plays as disciplined as they have been playing, they're going to stop Leonard Fournette.
Mm-hmm.
That means then they're going to say, okay, can Chark beat us? Who's the other kid? Robinson beat us. That's the key there. And they have a pretty decent tight end. But they're going to – I think Dennis Allen is going to see if Minshew can beat them by throwing the ball. Now, Minshew has had a very good time since taking over for Foles, throwing and passing the ball and keeping the team into some of these games, like we mentioned, right? But I just don't know if you look at the defenses that he has played against, do those defenses stack up to the Saints defense? I don't think so, because the only defense that came close to doing it, in my opinion, would be the Panthers. And then they put up 27 points on those guys, So we'll see how everything translates out on the field. The Jaguars on grass, they're 2-2 for the season. At home, they're only 1-1. I think we have a good chance to be able to go in and come home with the win. Now, we don't want to see any miracle what do you call that? The something relay. We don't want to see that go on, but we do want to see the Saints be consistent. And that's what I'm looking for in this game. Can we be consistent? And can we play at a level where we are not coming from behind, but we are setting the tone from the beginning?
Well, as far as setting the tone, let's borrow the phrase, from our guest, Scott Kennedy, earlier tonight, because we're both children of the 80s too. This game
this game looks like it will probably be won on both sides of the line of scrimmage, at the line of scrimmage. We just talked about how the Jaguars line, they give up a lot of pressures and allow Minshew to get hit a lot. That plays very well into the Saints defensive line's hands. And as well as the secondary is playing for New Orleans, I do look for Lattimore to try to be matched up on DJ Chark, their best wideout, as you pointed out. And Lattimore's played with a chip on his shoulder individually the last few weeks. So as long as that continues, I love the way that this Saints defense matches up with the Jaguars offense, as long as they can stop Fournette. And the Saints have given up to running backs in the last 3 games, and that includes Ezekiel Elliott, by the way. Only 53 yards per game and less than 3 yards per carry. So what's that tell you? That tells you that the Saints are shutting down the run just like they did last year. And that defensive line, we know, is already getting to the quarterback, making it a little bit easier, life a little bit easier in that secondary. Yeah. On the other side, if Jalen Ramsey plays, flip a coin, it's 50-50. And if he does play, is his heart going to be into it? That's the other question. That's another topic for another time.
Well, he did practice today. He did practice.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He did. And if Jalen plays, he'll be matched up on Michael Thomas, which means, are we going to see those other guys that you mentioned earlier, a Ted Ginn or a Traquan Smith or a Jared Cook, step up and make plays if Jalen Ramsey can at least contain Michael Thomas? Thomas is going to get his catches. We know that. But if Jalen can keep Thomas from taking control of the football game, one of these other guys are going to have to step up to give Teddy a consistent playmaking threat in the Jaguars secondary, which can be had. That Saints offensive line, we talked about Warford and Pete and how they're just not playing up to their usual high standards. Well, they're going to be tested this week because the Jags have a pretty tough defensive tackle in Marcel Darius. He rushes the passer well, as a big, strong, explosive first quick off the snap. So those guys and Eric McCoy are going to be challenged inside. The matchup to watch is Ryan Ramczyk and Teron Armstead, the 2 offensive tackles on the outside against Jaguars edge rushers Calais Campbell and Josh Allen in particular. But they have, I'll call him Yannick Noah, but that's not his name. I just can't pronounce his last name. For the Jaguars, he has 2 sacks and a handful of quarterback pressures along the edge as well. So Armstead and Ramczyk, that's the matchup to watch on the outside. Kamara, you mentioned how Christian McCaffrey had an absolutely outstanding game against Jacksonville. So did Denver's running backs, for that matter. That sets up a very nice game for Mr. Kamara. And Kamara and Thomas, they seem, I wonder if they have a competition in the locker room, Kyle, to see who has the best game between them, because they seem to take turns taking over a football game. And the way the cards line up, especially if Jalen Ramsey plays at cornerback for Jacksonville, this game lines up very nicely for Kamara to have an outstanding football game. And we might see some more shorter passes from Teddy this game, especially against that Jaguars pass rush. But he gets the ball into Kamara's hands quickly, and more importantly, with Kamara on the move, which Teddy has been doing pretty well the last 2 weeks. Then the Saints could put some points on the board again.
Yeah. Should be interesting, man. We shall see. It's the River City
2 wideouts to the left, 1
Miracle.
to the right. From the
don't do this.
Throws down the near sideline to Stallworth, and Stallworth tries to get away from some people and does to the 38-yard line. He needs a block. He needs a couple. Then they're going to lateral the ball to Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis tries to stay alive. He'll lateral it to Deuce. Deuce needing help. He laterals across the field, and the Saints are going to take it in with Pathan. If this is legal, they've done it.
No.
Jerome Pathan diving into the end zone.
I mean, you can't tell me that I just witnessed what I just saw take place.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. so
Thank you. Yeah.
That is the great Jim Henderson and my man Hokie Gajan, who rest in peace, Hokie. Man, that was a great call, and that was just awesome to see. man. And it was just unfortunate what happened with Carney. But anyway,
Yeah.
And that was so shocking because, Carney was so reliable, man. But it can happen to
he's in the Saints Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he is in the Saints. And, I mean, think about it. If it were not for Carney really coached up Hartley to be able to kick that winning field goal to help us get into the Super Bowl. So, all right. Huh?
Yes, he did.
Okay, cool. All right, so my concern, I know Jalen Ramsey is going to play. The Saints are going to be in the white jerseys. The Jaguars decided they're going to have their teal jerseys on. I wonder if the Saints are going to have the gold pants or the black pants. We shall see. That should be announced pretty soon. I think it's going to be a close game up until the third quarter. I think the Saints are going to pull away. I wouldn't be surprised if this game is more like a 38-31 type of game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints do have some little lapses here and there, but I believe the team is going to rebound. One thing I had to appreciate the guys on ESPN is they said you got to look at the Saints team. This team has character. The things that the Saints have been through the past couple of years, losing to the Vikings the way that we lost, losing to the Rams the way that we lost as well, and still, we remember during the summertime, Bob, we were focusing on this first 4 games of the season, but for the Saints to come away with the record that we're at currently is just tremendous to see. 4-1, right? Especially with Breeze not being in the fold. So that only bodes well for us to look at a positive prognosis for what can be for the rest of the team going forward the next couple of games until Breeze comes back. All right, what's your thoughts as far as the score?
I know we talked about, and I kind of bemoaned the fact that, that this could be a trap game. It could be, but I don't think it will be. I'm with you, Kyle. It wouldn't surprise me if it was a game, sort of a little bit of a back and forth for the first half. But I kind of see the Saints pulling away at some point. I don't think the Jaguars are going to put as many points on the board as you do. But I do see the Saints winning it. I'm going to go 33-21. I think that the defense for New Orleans is going to make some plays. But it wouldn't surprise me if Minshew did some running around and made a couple big plays of his own. I think Kamara is going to have a big game, and I think that we will see somebody else step forward, in the Saints passing game other than Michael Thomas and make a few plays as well. It needs to happen because the Saints front offensive line is going to have their hands full. I have confidence in those young men, though. I think that they'll be up to the task for the most part. But, I'm going to go Saints 33, Jaguars 21.
Yeah, look out for Lattimore against Chalk, but also look out for Demario Davis kind of blanketing and spying on his old buddy, old Gardner Minshew. Those two went to the same high school in Brandon, Mississippi. So I know Demario Davis has been having a Minshew jersey in his locker room. So that's pretty funny stuff. And also the league gave Mr. Davis back his $7,014, if I recall, for wearing the Man of God headband, which is kind of ridiculous, man. You got to find people for everything. I remember when Bears quarterback McMahon had Roselle on his head. That was classic, man. That was some classic stuff. So, okay, guys. Our Pelicans are playing in preseason. Zion, I believe, tonight had 29 points in 27 minutes. Wow. but they still lost. So
might be a lot of that this year, but they'll be fine.
Yeah, it's just preseason, guys. Just preseason, So don't take it personal, man. I gotta say, looking at the rest of the NFC South, the Falcons are struggling. The Panthers, surprisingly, are 3-2 right there, and we know we just defeated the Buccaneers. They gave a spirited game up until the second quarter, but I really think it's pretty interesting to see how certain teams in the National Football League are rising this year, like the 49ers. You still have Russell Wilson. He's performing well out there. So that's going to be a battle for the West, and the Rams are sinking. Gurley didn't practice today, so you guys got to watch out to see what's going to happen with the Rams, man. The Rams look kind of suspect. So, as well as the Dallas Cowgirls, they look kind of suspect as well. So we just got to take care of business in the Who Dat Nation. That's what I believe, Bob. And we will see our boys in black and gold perform. So Who Dat Nation, on Sunday, October 13th, the Saints go in and play Jacksonville Jaguars. And let's root for our boys in the black and gold, and hopefully they will have a large contingent down in Jacksonville as well. All right, Bobo, any last thoughts?
No. I mean, it feels like we had another great show. Hopefully we're continuing to put a good product out. And folks, you heard, if you tuned in earlier, you heard Kyle's big announcement. And we're excited. We're thrilled to be embarking on this project with the Maven Network and Sports Illustrated, SI.com. So thank you, Mr. Scott Kennedy, for coming on and joining us tonight. Hopefully we can get you on a few more times, and we're looking forward to working for you.
Yeah, definitely. And guys, don't forget, you can follow Bob on the World Wide Web. How?
Obviously, as we just learned tonight, I'm going to be churning out pieces for the Saints News Network and SI.com. But I can also be found on Canal Street Chronicles, which is on Facebook, or Twitter at Saints CST. I just published my 500th career article with Mr. John Hendricks and the gang over there. So thank you, gentlemen, for putting up with me.
Now, let me ask
and
you
thank
this,
you
Bob. Let me ask you this, Bob. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Okay.
Now, do you count those Twitter posts as articles as well, or
nope?
No. Okay,
nope.
All right.
Nope. These are what the old folks call the long ride. That Mr. Kennedy talked about. Through Sports Illustrated, the more traditional written pieces.
Yeah.
And my piece this morning, my 500th piece with CSC, was talking about and singing the praises of the Saints secondary. So that was an enjoyable piece.
Awesome.
No, when it comes to my little Twitter rants and everything like that, I'm probably in the tens of thousands. Lost count long ago there. But seriously, folks, I mean, thank you for everybody that's helped me along the way. I'm looking forward to giving everybody at least 500 more, between Canal Street Chronicles and obviously the Saints News Network now. But I can be found individually, Bob Rose at Facebook, or at BobbyR2613 on Twitter. And obviously we're going to be linking our Bayou Blitz Facebook page and at Bayou Blitz 412 Twitter account. Through what we're doing with SI.com as well. So if you aren't already following Kyle, myself, or our Bayou Blitz work and Facebook page, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to find out everything that we're doing if you kind of mainstream us through that group. For those of you that are already a member of it, understand that you are part of this exciting project as well. So we hope you are as excited as we are, and we thank you and love you for all your support.
Definitely. And don't forget, guys, you can go to si.com/NFLShow NFL/Saints and be able to follow us. All the new postings that we will be putting up starting this weekend, and as well as we're going to go full-fledged on next Monday. So Barry Hursters, he will be one of our featured writers, as well as Bob, myself, Brenda Borland, and a couple other of the Saints News crew. Don't forget, if you want to be a part of the Saints News crew, if you would like to get a little bit more information, you can be able to email me at kmosley@saintsnews.net. KMOSLEY@saintsnews.net, and I can be able to get with you and talk about joining the Saints News crew. I think that's about all, and if all hearts and minds are happy and content, we will say who dat. But guys,
who dat?
Don't forget. Oh, is that you, Sharita Diva?
Yes, it is.
Oh, hey, Diva, how you doing?
I'm good. I snuck in on y'all.
Yeah, you sure did. And we're about to sign off. So
hold on. Crime Center.
Well, if you guys didn't know already, Diva is a crime fighter, and that's why she's a superhero crime fighter. So in the New Orleans area. So, but we're about to. Well, Diva, good to have you on.
I just wanted to hop in and say hi, and that was a great game last weekend.
It was.
And hopefully Teddy will surprise us next week.
Definitely.
Well, this coming weekend.
Definitely. And Diva, I was telling people you're a superhero crime fighter in New Orleans, so people got to watch out for Sharita the Diva Baptiste. All right.
Good hearing your voice, Kyle.
Good hearing you too. And she's a part of the Saints News crew, guys. All right, we'll talk to you guys later. Don't forget, be tenacious. Don't ever give up. Who dat? Take care. Bye.
Yeah.